Welcome to another insightful episode of the Shift with Elena Agar Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Barry Labov. He's a veteran of the music industry turned marketing expert. We had a really deep conversation around maintaining integrity in creative work and the importance of balancing physical and mental well-being. Barry also shares invaluable advice on the significance of brand recognition, the evolving role of the CEOs in brand messaging, and why authenticity in recruiting and retaining top talent is key. In this episode, we'll also dive into his 5-step branding process, which underscores the value of personal and company branding and reveals how companies can keep their brand fresh and relevant. He's also the author of The Power of Differentiation book, which I highly recommend, and I'll make sure to include the link in the show notes. You will see them in the show notes for this episode. He's really passionate about creativity and differentiating your company from the rest of the competition and focusing on the strengths that your company and your team bring to the table. So being really a fan of marketing myself and branding, I found that the things that he talked about is something that we don't often think about. So I think if you're in a space where you're going through some kind of branding exercise in your company, maybe you're looking to build a company, maybe you're looking to do a little bit of an uplift or something like that, I think this is a really helpful conversation to listen to, and definitely check out his book because it has a lot of really practical and very unique points around how do you differentiate in a saturated market in most industries, and how do you stay true to the values of your organization. So check it out. And as always, please subscribe, share, and let me know what you think. Barry, welcome to the Shift Podcast.
Elena, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this.
I am super excited to chat with you. My audience knows how obsessed I am with brands and building and creating, and that is exactly what you're doing. You've been doing it for decades. Your company's been around for even longer than that. So I'm really excited to dive in on all the insights and knowledge that you have to share with us. But for my audience, give me a little snapshot of your rich career that you've had so far, and how did you get to brands?
Well, I started out in the music industry, so I used to have hair and I was in a rock band and we sold some music here or there. We were on a few Billboard charts. We were on an American Bandstand, a music video, things like that. So I learned a lot about creativity and working with people and really getting people to engage and rally around what you're all about. The other thing I learned doing that, and that's what I've brought forward in my career, is that differentiation is very different from superiority. So you have to look at what makes you unique. It may not mean you're superior in every way. It just means there's something distinctive about what you do. And the very best performers in music and other arts are the ones who have really honored what makes them unique, not altered it, and really maximized it. So what I did is when I went into music as a career, I looked at that. Then I went into advertising and marketing, and I realized there's not a big difference. You're creating things, you're trying to find the magic in what people do or what brands do. So that's what I've done. So started out very small in a rock band and now work with companies all over the world.
That's amazing. And so what is it about branding that has gone like what is exciting to you about building brands?
There's two things, and that's a great question. There are two things that I think are so important. One I've touched on, and it's really identifying your uniqueness. And it's so often that we're so close to who we are and what we do. And this could be personal branding or business branding. We're so close that we don't see it. And even if we start to see it, we're critical of it. We go, we're just, we're no different way about, okay. That's how it is in small companies and large companies. So number one, we have to identify it, accept it, and candidly honor it. The other thing that's really important in branding, and I believe, Elena, this is more important today than it has ever been, is that people need significance and meaning in what they do and in where they work and in what brand they represent. And if you go into a factory somewhere and all you're doing is just plugging in a wire harness or tightening a bolt and it means nothing, it's a sad existence and it means you're going to move on. If you're in that same factory and you're plugging in wire harnesses, but it's for an ambulance that's being built. And you have been told and celebrated as well for being able to do that because it may just save the lives of hundreds of thousands of people because people will be in that ambulance. All of a sudden, you're thinking, wait a minute, what I'm doing is actually meaningful. And you're less likely to move on and leave. So, identifying that brand and celebrating it with the most important people is what's so important.
Mm. The book that you recently released, The Power of Differentiation, what inspired you to do this now?
I originally thought, this would be great as a book to kind of have a synopsis of maybe 50, 60 different stories of brands that really did something great and in many cases made history. But as COVID took place a few years back, it all of a sudden occurred to me, 50 million people quit their jobs during the COVID epidemic. And what happened was it dawned on me that, many of those individuals, if not most of them, felt that what they were doing was not special and they're just getting the heck out of there. And I thought, we need people to understand that in many cases, they are doing something special. They are making a difference. And if we can do two things, if we can celebrate that brand and if we can celebrate the people, it's an amazingly powerful and positive message.
No, absolutely. I'm curious from your perspective, something that I think about quite often because as we kind of before we start recording, I mentioned I kind of build my own personal brand, and I feel that there is a strength around building that personal brand that then whatever I do, my personal brand is associated with the company brand, or that's my assumption. But I'm curious your thoughts on like the importance of when you're building companies, when you're building brands, the importance of the leader having the strong brand, or do you just focus on the company brand? Is it both? Like where are you on that?
Well, what's interesting is I've known some leaders who are very low key individuals who are not exuding great charisma or inspiration. And I believe if they try to be something they're not, it will come off phony.
Mm,
If they focus on their brand and realize that, hey, it's not about them, it is about the brand. And if they can openly say, look, let's say I'm an accountant, I am not a brand person, I'm not the passion person who engineered this product, but I know that what we're doing is great. If that leader does that, he or she has a chance to truly engage and attract people. But I do believe you've got to watch out many times where the leader tries to be the brand for the business because in my opinion, it should never be bigger than what the brand itself is. If it's all about that leader, you get into a situation where it's that personality, it's that approach or that style. And honestly, I think it does an injustice to the company or the brands it's the brand itself because we need to look at what that brand stands for, what that company stands for as something bigger than one individual. And if
mm.
it's no bigger than that one individual, it is a house of cards and it could fall at any minute.
Yeah, it can be very limiting for sure. And it's very hard to then you just like yeah then it's like the dilemma of when you're a solo entrepreneur and then everybody wants to do business with you because they know you, but then it's like you can't even pass people, you can't even pass your clients on to other people because they're like, well, we kind of buying the personal brand that this person is selling. So I've definitely run into that. It's a tough place to be in.
Well, one thing you
Yeah.
said, and I'll jump on that because I think it's really insightful. That's one of the dangers when it's all about me. If it's all about me
Mhm.
and I'm great and boy, everybody loves me, well, okay, that's one thing. But if we look deeper and you are a solopreneur, but then you're bringing some people on and you make sure that the experience your customers get is the experience that you would provide them if you were a solo performer. It's very important because experience, the customer experience, is exactly the same as the brand in the eyes and hearts of the consumer. So I'll say it again, the customer does not distinguish between the experience they get and the brand. So
Mm,
if they walk into a car dealership and they want to buy a car they're madly in love with and they have a horrific experience, it doesn't just sour them on that dealership. They are done most likely with that brand. They will never buy that car And so we have to realize that. So solo
Mhm.
entrepreneurs have to think, now, wait a minute, I'm growing my business. I can't do everything, but I have to make sure that the customer experience that we deliver is something I am proud of. And it's based on what we are all about.
Mm. Speaking of experience, I feel like that's an area, at least in the US, that the customer service and that a customer experience has just gone down significantly, So as you're speaking, I was like, this is a great time to read your book because it's a reminder of the importance of all these different factors that drive our businesses, essentially. So it's something I run into all the time, and I don't know if it's just me, but I really have significantly seen this customer experience really decline. And I think part of it is because people don't see it from a brand perspective.
I agree with you. And you know what? It's almost crazy. You would think with the technology today that we would be able to be better with brand experience than ever, but we're
Mm,
not. And you're right, the brand experience has deteriorated. It's also one reason why, if we can provide something that we believe is legitimate and authentic to our customers, we'll probably win. And Elena, here's what's really important. I think many of our listeners may really not believe this, but it is true. The consumer or the customer, they do not expect perfection. They don't. But boy, do they expect you to care.
mm,
Do they expect you to make sure that you fix that problem? And I think that's one thing that's gotten lost in this, because in this era of really poor customer service, it's kind of like you have a bad experience and they go dark on you. You've got to
mm,
find them. You're rushing around to go find them, and they're going, I don't want to deal with it. And
mm,
that's exactly the opposite of what they should do. They should be able to say, look, Elena, I know we made a mistake. I'm going to make sure this is right. It'll take a couple more days, but we will fix this for you. And you, I am telling you, this is statistical, you would be more loyal to that company after the mistake and they fixed it than you would be if they never had a mistake and everything was just decent. You'd be more
mm.
loyal because you got to know that person or that company and you found that they cared. And that's what's so important.
Mm, yeah, because you've built that trust and they were kind of there for you essentially to solve they cared enough to be there for you to solve whatever issues that that you were dealing with. I'm curious, in your experience, you've been doing this for many years, and on the recruitment, talent development side of the house in the corporate world, we know that brand recognition is essential for people applying for jobs. And I would imagine and it's even more impactful for the younger generation. So for like Gen Zs coming in, they care about the brand so much. And are you visible? Are you on the right social media channels and so on? Versus maybe those that are more senior, they're not as let's say they're not as diligent in terms of like digging deep into the brand. They care more about how much am I getting paid, what are my working hours and so on, and kind of like who's gonna be my manager. So I'm just curious, because at the end of the day, people that are being hired are clients as well. Like they're your customers, they're your clients and so on. Have you seen this? Is it always been like this, like kind of different from generation to generation? Is kind of everybody now on brand essentially and caring about the brand of a company? What have you seen?
It has changed. I'd say 20 years ago, when I would work with the CEO, I would say, okay, once we determine your brand, we're going to make sure the first step is to launch it to your people before the world so that your people all buy into it. And I would say 95% of those CEOs 20 years ago said, no, 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 we're not going to waste our time on that.
Mm,
Today, 99% of them say, thank you so much because we need this. This is so important. So I really do applaud today's leaders because they get this. Now, some of them get it because they're great people, and others get it because they're frankly just really smart. And they realize retention rates are really low, turnover is very high, dissatisfaction is very high. So, what I think is important is you think about it, the company should not distinguish the message should not distinguish between the message they have to gather and attract employees versus the one they have to gather and attract customers. Because you think about it, it should be the same message because it should be you, right? It should be this is what we are about. So I believe the smart company today and the sincere company shares who they are and also who they are not. That's important. We aren't this. We don't do that. We don't do this, this, and that. That's important for people because if you try to be all things to all people, people don't believe it. Nobody
Mm,
believes it, right? So I think you share exactly what your company is about, the inspiration behind what you do, even if it's not attractive to every single person. You have to have that courage. Then you mentioned different social media channels. I think those are important, of course, but it's far more important what that message is. And
mm,
again, I'll repeat, it's what are we at our heart? What are we doing? I mentioned, ambulances or fire trucks as an example, because I work with some of the very finest ambulance companies in the world. If they're only saying, look, we build products that are out there in the streets and come on in to make blank dollars an hour, it's like, okay. If they say, you know what, our goal is to save 5 million people a year
mm.
with our product, and we may not be perfect and we may not have the best benefits or the highest wages because somebody out there has something better than someone else. But you know what? We care about first responders. We care about taking care of them and all the people in those ambulances. And you know what? That will strike a chord if that's authentic with a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the way you just said it now, it's like it's a whole different message. You're talking about two different brands right there. Yeah. What is the leadership role in all this?
Leadership's role is to differentiate. And what I mean by that is the leader is to be the cheerleader, the person who is rallying people around, the person who, on a daily basis, not once a year at the annual meeting,
Mm,
not once a summer at the company picnic, but every day, that leader is to rally people, is to remind us why we're doing what we're doing. I run a small company. I remind people on a daily basis, hey, this is why we do what we do. Hey, this is what we are all about. And it's very important. That's what the leader is about. It is a selfless position at times, it is a lonely position at times. But I believe it's a very rewarding one because if you can give employees the job of a lifetime, the opportunity that they would get nowhere else, then you're changing their lives. You're making them feel significant.
mm. If a leader's listening to this and they're like, okay, you got me. I need to up my brand. Maybe I need to rebrand, right? I think statistically, I think they say you should rebrand your company, like freshen up the look of your company, like every 7 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's accurate. Not so much that you're changing your brand, but you're
Mm,
making it more relevant. You're
mm.
making sure it's fresh. Yeah, I agree with that.
Why is it 7 years? Is it just because like that's like, do you have any idea? I was always curious, like why the 7 years mark?
I've heard it a few times. I think it's just a general number. I think it's just trying to say every so often after, so many years, we get tired of something and we don't pay attention to it. But the
Yeah.
thing is we don't want to just change it to change it. It still has to be us and it still has to be authentic.
Right. Yeah, because there's a couple of different companies. I forget now off the top of my head, but a couple of different companies went through a rebrand, and you see that on applications, like on my phone. I'm like, "Where's this?" Because I'm looking for a different logo, and then like they're changing the logo, but then I'm like, "Oh, this is a pretty cool design." But back to the leadership piece, I'm just curious if somebody's listening to this and they're a leader and they're like not really sure where to start. Like, where does one start? Particularly if they're like never really done with brand, not really into this kind of work, like not really sure how to, even put on that creative hat. Where do you recommend they start?
Well, if they read my book, that's a place to start because I go through it and they could try to do it themselves. So, I've had some leaders go, hey, I'm going to try to do this myself. I go, great, go for it. I think they have to realize that when you look at your brand, it's not something that you come up with on a napkin and draw something and say, "Hey, let's go do it." And then a month later you change that, or a year later you change it again. You have to realize that to really identify the magic in your brand and then celebrate it, it takes work. It does. And it takes time. But the outcome is not in days or weeks. It's in literally decades and decades and decades of value. Because even if you update or tweak that logo every 5 or so years, it's still that same company. And so it's very important. that you realize the depth you have to go to. So
Mm,
what we have a process, and I'll run through it quickly, but we have a
mhm,
5-step process. One step nobody does. And if anybody out there does do it, please get a hold of me. I want to talk to you. I want to learn what you do, and I'll share what I do. But the first step is we listen to people. So we call it a brand assessment. And we listen to people and we learn and we hear what they say. And it's not just on a scale of 1 to 4. What do you think? We don't go into that. We go into open-ended questions and we listen between the lines. We listen to what people say, but also what they don't say, where they get excited when they talk about the brand. And when I say people, it's anyone involved, from the employees to the leadership, to the customers, to the former customers, to some of the people in the industry. We then do a step that nobody does, and that is we go into, either physically or sometimes it's virtually, the facility itself, and I send my technical team to do a technical immersion. And we go into it, and sometimes it takes 3 hours, sometimes it's a day and a half, 2 days, and we comb through whatever is going on in there to find potential differentiation. And the reason it takes long and the reason it's so important is you get so close to what you do, whether it's in a factory or at a technology center, it doesn't matter. You're so close to it, you stop seeing it.
mm,
And you need a stranger to come in and go, okay, how come you do that? And your first response will be, wow, we always do that. Okay, but why? And you go,
mm,
oh, and you start to think. And then we go, does everyone else do this in your industry? And you go, well, not exactly. We're the only one that does this and that. Well, all of a sudden you start to realize, wait a minute, we're doing some things that are actually unique. We then, in our third step, we put together a plan and we do a jam session. Like in a rock band, we do a jam session with a client where there's a lot of ideas floating around, and we determine together as a team what are those unique differentiators. And we go to the fourth step, which is where most agencies begin, which is we start working on, could be a logo, could be a website. But the fifth step is really amazing. And that's what we've talked a little bit about. And that is the internal celebration. And we have had internal celebrations of the brand where people were literally crying tears of joy
mhm,
because they started to realize how important it is what they're doing and the pride they had in that brand. After that internal celebration, we launch out to the world. So that's how we do it. You have to get close to what you're producing and what you're delivering and what you're serving and identify why is it distinctive. You honor it and you
mm.
celebrate.
I imagine also through that process, there's a lot of change that happens depending on where the company is and where they want to be. And that probably impacts employees the most as well. So, and we as human beings don't like change very much, right? And so how is, I guess, if you can speak on the employment and employee engagement piece of it, or just the whole team, like does it, the size matter? Like in that case, like I would imagine smaller teams probably a little bit easier to make a change versus larger ones. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's what's interesting, Elena. There's far less change than you think because we're doing something unique.
Mm,
And that is we're identifying what they are already doing well.
mm,
We are not coming in to say we're changing it all. We are actually saying, let's discover what you do that is special. Let's not
mm,
try to create something brand new where you're going, oh my gosh, now we claim to do this or that. We're not. So the change that goes on might be the change of a logo, the change of a slogan. It might be the change of some great feature that's being created that has never had a name, and you're giving it a name. And if there is change, it's the most positive change, which is the employees are now going, you know what? I actually know what's going on here. They're actually sharing this with me.
mm,
So that's where the change goes. One thing we really do stress is you do not create your brand, you discover it.
mm.
And when you see failures out there, brand failures, it's inevitably somebody was trying to create a brand and they tried to cobble together all the things everyone else is doing so they could be the brand that beats everyone else. But the problem is they became something that was unattainable. Became something that wasn't them, that they couldn't sustain.
Mm,
So we say, look at all the things you do. Let's determine what is your best. Let's not change that. One of the questions we ask in our first step when we talk to employees and customers and leaders, we don't come in and say, okay, Elena, what do you want to change here? What's really bad here? We go, if there were one or two, maybe three things that you do not want this company to change, what are they?
Mm.
And I'm telling you, it's eye-opening, because all of a sudden, our clients, when they hear this, they go, oh my gosh, you heard that? We go, yes. Everybody loves blank, blank, and blank. Do not change that. And there is such a strength in that. And there's an affirmation that, you know what, maybe we've been doing something pretty good. I work with companies that are 50 years old, 120 years old. I even work with two companies that are over 200 years old. And I've had a few of them in meetings at first say, we don't do anything special. We're no better than anyone else. And, we have to say to the client, pardon me, you're in business for over 120 years, and you're telling me you don't do anything that's unique or special. We don't believe it. You're doing something, or you would have been
Mm.
out of business. And that applies to if you were in business for 5 years. I mean, think about it. I've been in business 5 years. I don't do anything different. Hold on a minute. You've got to be doing something different. You have to
Mm.
be. You have to be doing something that is good. Just don't change that. Honor that, tweak and change some other things.
That's actually a really, really powerful perspective, because oftentimes we think about what can we do better, what can we change, what can we, and it's like, no, 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 let's just pause and look at what do we do really well, right? And kind of double down. I like that actually. I didn't think about it. My mind is always like, okay, how can we improve? How can we do better? But it's so powerful to be like, well, where do we actually thrive? Like, where have we done? Why do people keep coming to us, right? That's interesting. I like that. From a marketing perspective, it seems like it's more difficult than ever to be seen, to be known, because it seems, at least in my experience, and again, very limited experience, and I'm probably wrong, but it's like a numbers game. So it's almost like a money game when it comes to investing in marketing strategies and so on. So what's your take on it? Like, how does, you have a great brand, there's a lot of great brands, there's a lot of great companies doing amazing things, and we never heard of them. Like, where do you start?
Well, I'll talk from personal perspective. I'm in the marketing and training world, and I have some competitors, and they primarily put out social media and other posts or advertising, and it's all about them, and it's how great and funny and wacky they are, and how smart they are, and it's about them. And I think you could put a lot of money on that approach, and I think it's not going to appeal to many people,
Mm.
because I think that message is not, it's not humble, it's not genuine, it's arrogant. And I think no matter how much money you throw at ideas like that, if they're not valid, they're not going to
Mm.
get much traction. I think you have to realize sometimes there's a long game where you do the right thing and you continue doing that right thing, and you're open to constantly learn. But you have to have confidence that if you present yourself in the way that is who you are, that you know what, you just might lose a lot of clients who might have been interested, but you're losing the correct type of client that you would never make happy. Lose that type of client and attract the ones who really appreciate what you do. I when I started my business, I would wake up in the morning and I'd have no momentum, and I'd have to work, 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 work to go get any kind of momentum. And then it finally started to dawn on me, I don't need 800 brand new clients today. If I got one in the next couple of months, that'd really be great. And all of a sudden you start to think, okay, it's not getting mass quantities of the wrong people that are going to bother you and not appreciate you and beat you up on price. You don't need that. You need those few that go, hey, I kind of like the way you present what you're talking about. And, I value that. And
Mm.
translation for all of us in the audience, it means I will pay your fees. I will pay you fairly. I will not try to beat you up or pit you against someone else, because I think you're unique enough that I can't get what you provide from anywhere else.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good reminder for myself, and I'm sure my listeners as well. It's just a hard pill to swallow sometimes because we want, we want to have those, flow of new customers and new clients. But you're right, like sometimes just focusing on like not everybody's gonna buy your stuff, not everybody's gonna care about it, not everybody's gonna like it, and that's okay. Focus on people that actually buy into, align with your values essentially.
I agree. On my website, we have a page that says a good fit. I think it's titled that, and it tells what kind of clients we are not good for. We just
Mm,
say we are not a good fit for blank, 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 and blank. If you're looking for this, we're probably not that good. If you're looking for that, we're not that good. If you look for, and I've had a few people say, "God, I can't believe you put it on there," and I'm going, but it shows confidence. It is honest. We're not going to appeal to everybody.
mm,
And in my business, I am not the kind of leader of a company that will appeal to a brand that feels like they have it all figured out. So a very arrogant brand that thinks they've got it all figured out and they just need some marketing company to go do what they want. We're probably not very good because we're going to mess everything up for them. We're going to go, well, wait a minute. Have you also considered this? Wait a minute. Are you sure you want to? We think you should consider that. And if that is something that a client does not want to hear, and there are clients like that because they haven't figured out, then they shouldn't waste my time or their time because we will not be the arms and legs running out their orders. It's just not what we do.
mm,
We need our company caters to only the client that's hungry. They're hungry and they want to grow and they're vulnerable. They're willing to say, "Hey, we're not doing good here. Hey, we need help there." We do great with that client. We do not do great with the client says, "Look, we're great. We're in great shape. We know what we're doing. And I don't know if you're good enough for me. And I'm going to pitch you against these other companies." And I'm going, why waste that energy? I think we have to, Elena, be brave enough to realize what we are and what we are not and accept that we should really not be the perfect choice for 99% of the people out there. We should be the perfect choice for maybe 1 or 2%. And I think that's really good.
mm. I appreciate that look. Yeah, on from that perspective, it's important. It's a good reminder, as I think it's for many people. I'm curious also, to shift gears to you as an entrepreneur and you as a business person, business leader. You've been doing this for a long time. What keeps you going? What is the because you seems to just evolve yourself. Like every so often, it seems like in a brand almost. So you continue to like elevate and grow just based on just the homework that I've done. You've done so many different things. What is it that keeps driving you?
I love to do things that have not been done before. So I love to help clients make history. And that doesn't mean global history with the largest clients in the world. It might be a small family business, and they're really trying to do something that they haven't been able to do in all these decades. We're working with a, a baseball team, a professional baseball team, and we're trying to help them make history in their community. We're doing things that just haven't been done before. So I love that. It drives me, it energizes me to do that. One thing for me, way back when I started in music, I thought that music was my calling, but really my calling is being creative. And
Mm,
the more I can create and also create an environment where others are creating, the better. So that's what it is. I want to do things that haven't been done. I want to do creative things. Again, I'm not interested in just being an order taker. I can take orders, but it's like a lot of people can. I want to be a little more unique than that in the eyes of the people I work with. So creativity, innovation, being bold enough to do something that people are going, you will not get away with this, and going, well, let's see. Let's see if we can.
mm. I'm curious if if there's a 20-year-old marketing person that's starting their career or a creative in that creative space, what are the top pieces of advice you would give them?
I would say, and I failed at this a few times myself, I would say do not compromise your integrity on the creative you're producing. So that 20-year-old, if he or she starts a business and has 2 or 3 partners in it, and if that 20-year-old is looking at the work that's going on and it's not at the level that he or she wants. Now, I don't mean not the style, I mean at the level. It's not at the quality level or the inspiration level. Step in, and even if there's conflict, make it right. Stand up for what you create and make sure that those around you who represent your brand live up to that level. And at times I took my eye off the ball, years ago, and I was focusing on growth elsewhere. And then I would turn around and go, oh, I'm not proud of the work we just did.
Mm,
And that was a mistake I made. So I would say be uncompromising.
mm. And how do you take care of your well-being through the roller coaster of just running a business, writing books, managing teams, and all of that? Like, how do you what do you have any routines or anything that you follow each day?
Yeah, I physically and mentally I'm very consistent. So I'm not the guy that works out for 6 hours a day on the weekend, but nothing during the week. I'm the guy that works out half an hour a day, every day of the week, rain or shine. I have a small group of friends, and I will go enjoy whether it's golf and other things. I have a great family. I enjoy being with my grandkids. I have two grandkids that I love, and we have tremendous times with. And one of them, by the way, just won Most Creative Classmate,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
great award for a 6-year-old. And I said, "Where do you think you get all that creativity?" He said, "Papa, my brain." I went, "Okay, great." I thought I was gonna get some credit for that. But no, I look at a pretty wide balance of having a wonderful family life, enjoying being in good health, you know,
Mhm,
and constantly listening and learning and trying to be of value to people. So you kind of think it's what I said earlier. We need significance.
mhm.
A really great writer by the name of Seth Godin, if you're familiar with
Of
Seth,
course.
okay. Seth has a book called Song of Significance, and it's a great, great book. In fact, I have a podcast I'm starting, and Seth is going to be on my podcast. And I was, very thrilled that he would do that. And I thought, he's all about the significance of the individual. And my book kind of dovetails with that, which is you got to look at that brand and give significance to the individuals behind it. So I try to do that, Elena, every day with my people. I try, and it's not easy sometimes. I try to make sure my people feel a part of this, that they're not behind me just doing what I do, but they're actually right next to me and they're able to take my place on a lot of things. So I get energized by that.
Mm. And before I ask you my last question, I'm curious, where can people find your book, and where do you spend most of your time? I guess, is it online? Is it like where can people get in touch with you?
Um, I have two different websites that I can be reached at, and I would love it. And it doesn't have to be a transactional discussion. It could be, hey, I got a question for you. So one is my company website, which is Labov, Labov.com. And the other is barrylabov.com. And if you go to barrylabov.com, there are free downloads. Plus, you can connect to some of the music I did when I was, I don't know, as young as 14 and maybe to age 30. So there's a rock opera on some of the music's rock operas, some of it's rock and roll music. So some of it's on that site. So it's kind of wacky. You kind of go, okay, this guy's a little bizarre, but okay, he's original. Uh, to find the book, it's distributed worldwide by Simon and Schuster, so it can be found almost anywhere. Obviously on Amazon, it's there right now. And I urge anybody buy the book. If you don't like it, email me. I'll give you the money back. I think it's worth it. And give a review, you know. But I think it's something the book is an inherently positive book. What I didn't want, Elena, was some book that was either some old guy's memoir where he was talking about himself. And I hate those books. So my book has almost nothing about me in it. I probably am mentioned 10 times out of 60,000 words. Okay. So it's other people are being mentioned. So that's one thing. And I think the other part of the book is it is a very humble, inspiring book because it's about what can be done. It's not about what isn't to be done or how bad things are. It's about what can be done. And it's really about discovering what makes you unique, whatever the heck that is, which I think makes it kind of intriguing.
Hmm, I think so too. I think again, like you really, you changed my mindset a little bit about that. It's not change, but remind me. I guess you reminded me of the importance of uniqueness,
we focus a lot on so many other things, but I think we just forget how much uniqueness we have to us, our values, and then being able to translate that into our businesses is equally as valuable. So I think it's I think it's a very interesting again thought, right? Because again, maybe that's just my brain, the way it operates. I'm always like change but it's like maybe doesn't need to be all that. Maybe it just needs to be right here and just make it great, make this great.
Well, I'll jump in. I know we're toward the end, but I
Mm,
think you're right. I don't think it's all about change. I think
mm,
it's about realizing, and I mean this, the very few things that we do really well, because we don't do 1,000 things well. We might do 1 or 2, 3 things well. Okay, please, let's identify that. Don't change those things.
mm,
Please don't change them. And if anything, I keep using the word, celebrate them. Feel good about them. I mean, think about, we talked a little bit about change. This is like an anti-change message in that
mm,
don't change everything. Don't identify, and I mean it, 1, 2, or 3 things. I know for me, there are like 2 or 3 things I do really, really well, and and I'm not being humble, there are like thousands of things I do either mediocre or terrible.
mm.
And I'm going, I should stay away from those things, and I should really just say, "Look, this is what I do well, and I'm going to be more confident than ever in them," and, you know, feel good about it, and then leverage those things, and that's what I think we have to do.
Barry, thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to make sure to include all the things that you mentioned in the show notes as well for the audience to get your book, and definitely do my best to share that book and make sure that the right people get it and really benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. You are an absolute pleasure. Love the questions. I could tell you were in it every second. I think it's fantastic. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.